Good question. So I started Morgan James a little over 20 years ago because of some holes I felt that I discovered and I wasn't the only one, of course, but I discovered in my publishing path. So I was a banker back in the 90s and ended up writing my first books. And I got picked up by a publisher, very fortunate. The book did really, really well. But as a typical traditionally published author, I released a lot of control. I sold them my rights. And my challenge as an entrepreneur, and this is probably most entrepreneurs, is we don't like giving up control. Not that we're control freaks, but we like to hold and create content. We like to do other things with our content. But when you sell that to a third party, like a publisher, they'll get in your way. For example, when I published my first book, when I got my first copies, they added 3 chapters to my book. Now, I could have written it if they had asked, but they added content. It was good, but it wasn't me, so that was a challenge. I had very little to do with the book once I sold them the rights to it. I had no input in the cover. I had no input in the final version of the book. I didn't even like the title or subtitle, but nobody asked me. But I still liked enough to promote it, and it really gave me a booster in my day job as a banker. It was phenomenal. But every time I wanted to go buy books for my talks, the things that I wanted to do with the books, I could only buy 500 copies at a discount. And then they told me to go buy them from bookstores after that. And when I called to ask questions, they would say, "What are you doing?" And every time I gave a talk, they had to approve my PowerPoint presentation. They really got in my way. And there was no relationship. Not that I'm anybody special, but I'd call them up and they're like, "Who are you again?" I'm one of your best-selling authors. My second and third books were in the Guerrilla Marketing series, and Jay, my co-author, had sold 15 million books. My second book sold 40,000 copies to the bank I worked for, and they bought them through retail. I was pretty significant in my mind, of course, but never knew who I was and always had different people to talk to, and there was just no relationship. I was struggling with that because entrepreneurs are typically relationship-driven, and I certainly was. By my third book, there's just a challenge of fighting over every detail. Like, for instance, our third edition of the Guerrilla Marketing book for mortgage brokers back in the day was coming out in the year 2000, right after the Y2K bug. But our publisher in 99 told us about something called the internet that they thought would crash and burn because of the Y2K bug. So they made us take out any reference in the book around the internet. No email, no forums, no chat rooms, no World Wide Web, no websites, no internet marketing taken out of the book. Now, it was in the first edition, of course. So the book was a failure, pretty much after that. It was still good content, but it wasn't what people were expecting after this. So those kind of challenges with the traditional publishing for me was significant. And as I went out on the speaking circuit, I met other people like me who had great books, who were entrepreneurs. And I do think the late 90s, early 2000s, when we entrepreneurs really started to step into this authority role and started to write books. So the typical publishing model just wasn't built for us. So I met lots of good friends who were just struggling with the same relationship and challenges and opportunities, but it was still good, but not great for us. So after my 3-book deal with the publisher, I said, what do I need a publisher for? I'm a best-selling author. I'll go self-publish. And again, that is wonderful and better than doing nothing at all. But when you self-publish, pros and cons to that as well. Self-publish, it was my book, my covers, my content. I loved it. It was priced the way I wanted. Everything was wonderful, except I did have a challenge getting media. The same media that would interview me the week before on my traditionally published books were turning me away on my self-published books because I wasn't vetted by a third party. And bookstores just wouldn't carry the true self-published books that I was doing. And it was frustrating. And the sad part, a little bit of humbling too, is I just couldn't sell them faster than the termites were eating them out of my garage. So I'm thinking, man, there's got to be a better way for we entrepreneurs. We really need that credibility, that distribution, and that opportunity to hit bestseller lists and things like that, the media opportunities. I think we deserve that. We've got something good to say like all the other authors. But we want to be in more control and more, create additional content. So I went to my mentor, who was my co-author of the Guerrilla Marketing for Writers book, Jay Levinson, who I met early in the 90s. And he wanted me to put down an outline for what I thought the publishing relationship should look like. My thinking was, there had to be a middle road for us because there were both pros and cons of both. And he had been published originally by Houghton Mifflin, who published Guerrilla Marketing originally. And he alluded to me that if I put an outline together, that he would take it to Houghton Mifflin, and we entrepreneurs would have a place to go to publish. So I pour my heart and soul into it. Obviously, entrepreneurs retaining control of their intellectual property, making decisions together with the entrepreneurs, and then working on their business, not just our business. Because we always teach authors, and I think this is a big part of the hybrid space, is teaching authors to think 2 products ahead, to think about the additional revenue streams from the book. Because typically most authors will earn some royalties and good money from their books, of course, that's the goal. But most of us will earn more income and opportunity because we wrote the book. So we need to lean into it. But again, most publishers would get in the way. So I pour my heart and soul into this outline. A lot of guerrilla marketing, a lot of Zig Ziglar and John Maxwell and Bill Bacharach and Todd Duncan, all the things that I had been learning over the years, values-based selling, serving others, helping others realize their goals, the things that the typical publishers didn't care about. They may care about them, but not care about them for us as their authors. And I give it to Jay, and he didn't take it to Houghton Mifflin. He said he loved it, and he said, now go do it. So we launched Morgan James, named after my kids, and the idea was I wanted to look and feel and smell like a regular publisher, but dagnabbit, I wanted to stay out of the way but give them the resources they needed so they could be successful, and the more I could help them be successful, the more successful that we would be, as a publisher. So that was the kind of the birth, where hopefully serving others, giving them the tools that they needed to be successful and get in the space. And of course, over the last 22 years, we've earned, our space in the industry. Publishers Weekly called us the first hybrid publisher, for lack, again, of definition. And then we earned our way into the bookstores. First New York Times bestsellers were in 2006. First #1 New York Times bestsellers in 2011. And just continued to earn the credibility in the space. So now today, a good hybrid like Morgan James could get, 100% of our books in bookstores and work with the authors so they have more than just 3 weeks to figure out if it's going to be a success.